Aboard those airplanes alone, 266 people have lost their lives.
Where fate and history intertwine.
So Fiona was born in September 2000, so a year on, 2001, she was just about a year old. And I used to, as a technology company, everyone was in there early, it was a brokerage company. So we were always in at around 7:15, 7:30. And I literally was going out of the door at about 6:15 to catch my train. And my wife Tracy called me back and said, look, and there was Fiona stumbling around, holding onto the edge of the table, sort of half crawling, half walking, and then eventually getting up and walking. So, yep, I missed 2 trains. And eventually I took the subway down to the World Trade Center after Grand Central like I normally did.
And that the attack planes were the hijacked domestic flights.
September 11th, the year 2001, a day unlike any other in the long course of American history, a terrorist act of war
so I
against
came out, I looked up, and the building was on fire at the very top, way up at the top. And somebody said a Cessna, small plane that had hit the building. So a lot of people were wandering around. There was no major concern. People just thought that something bad had happened, but it was isolated.
It was crashed deliberately.
At Ian Dole's company, they had 241 employees and unfortunately lost 61.
All of them hijacked airliners. Then
was closed. I started going towards my building, which was 2 World Trade Center. And at that time it was still open. And literally as I was walking through the door, the second plane hit our building. And debris started coming down and I just ran back, as did everybody. A few minutes later, the police came and they barricaded us from the entrance. But still, we were only probably about 30 or 40 yards away. Then people started talking about something bad, really bad had happened, that it was too much of a coincidence. And then it started getting really nasty because you could see people jumping.
Victims falling, and in some cases, jumping from the 2 buildings.
It was horrible. And then, again, we were moved further back. And that's basically where everybody stopped. And I stopped with everybody and looked at the buildings. And in my worst nightmare, I never thought the buildings were going to come down. It never even occurred to me. They're big buildings, there were fires, isolated floor. And the plane that hit our building took out the floors between 78 and 86. And so it actually went through our floor. Wow. I couldn't tell that from where I was. I could tell it was somewhere one of the buildings started coming down. And you've seen that on the documentaries a lot. It sort of came down fairly slowly, and all of a sudden this cloud just mushroomed out from the side. And that's when everybody ran. Everybody ran because it was just a lot of dust and debris. The memory I have of that day, which is interesting, was it was a beautiful day, and there were women had sandals on. And when people took off, I just remember seeing this sea of sandals. So it was just women just kicked off their sandals and ran. So everybody just left everything that they didn't have to have on, and they ran. I suppose by the time I was about 5 or 10 blocks away, the second tower came down. And so I saw the top of it come down. I didn't see the rest of it. Obviously, I saw the first one come down. And what's interesting was that there was a previous terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. And when that happened, again, we were on the same floor, the 84th floor, we hadn't moved, was that the stairwells got very full of smoke. So apparently, when this happened, when I talked to some of the people who got out of the building safely, the people who had been there in 1993, and there were quite a lot of them, they decided to stay put because they didn't want to risk the danger of going up and down the stairwells and not knowing where they were going up or going down. So a lot of the people who died were the people who were actually there the first time. I went downstairs and to get on the train, and the concessionary stands where they had drinks there was nobody manning them, but people wanted to get drinks because there were a lot of people like myself. They were covered in ash and they wanted something to drink, but people were putting money down. And so there was this sea of $1, $5 bills everywhere, and no one was taking them, which is the opposite would normally happen in New York. So
It's times like these that you see the real goodness in people.
Going down there was absolutely awful. There were armored cars, there were soldiers on every corner, there was literally 6 inches of dust everywhere. It was disgusting. People wearing masks, and there was still this haze. And it's the sadness of obviously losing a lot of people. There were some obviously bad things that I saw that day in terms of people. It really impacted me, and I think everybody else that did it in ways that I really wasn't expecting. That, for instance, when we were in the building, the new building, they were taking out the debris on the barges and taking it out to Staten Island, and they would drop these big heavy girders on the barges, and that was right below our building. And every time we did it, everybody would jump, and you sort of became very, very skittish for a while. Mm-hmm. And every time you heard a loud explosion or anything, and that's not like me. That sort of thing never usually phases me. But so it took a good 2 or 3 months to start getting over that. It suddenly occurred to me one day that the people there were so many people who gave their lives that day, especially the police and the firefighters. So I decided to become a volunteer firefighter, it was great fun, a lot of work. You have like 200 hours of training, and it's interesting. Quite a few people. There was this curve. A lot of people volunteered right after 9/11, and the fire departments they thought that was awesome, but they dropped off. It's a huge commitment, So I suppose that was my one.
1/2 hour later, at approximately
During and after this huge disaster in our country's history, the people of the U.S. unite together to overcome.